I'm Vincent's side piece. On the day Vincent got engaged to his first love, I left him a gift, my urn. While he held the urn and was in a world of pain, I was already in Turkey living my best life. Until Vincent, drunk, shattered the urn and spread powdered milk everywhere. A few days later, Vincent showed up in front of me, clenching his teeth, and asked, "Your ashes turned out to be powdered milk?" I gave him an apologetic smile. "Sorry, I ran out of coffee powder back then." The day Vincent's first love, Wendy, came back to the country, I was at the spa with Susan getting facials. Holding a mirror, I looked at my perfectly youthful, heavily pampered face and was so pleased I couldn't resist touching it. Susan, beside me, looked at me with a gossipy grin. "Mandy, seriously? Wendy's back and you're still in the mood for a facial? I just don't get you sometimes. You say you're head over heels for Vincent, but you're not even the least bit anxious. Say you don't love him, but the stuff you've done doesn't seem like you're just in it for the money. I'm done with you." She reapplied her face mask and laid back, ignoring me. I glanced at the untouched phone next to me. My smile faded. Of course, I knew about Wendy. She is the girl Vincent holds dear, the love he couldn't have. Even after being abroad for 5 years, she remains the center of attention. And me? I'm just Vincent's side chick. Someone without any label. I got up from the bed, switched back to my clothes, and said goodbye to Susan, still on the bed. "I'm heading out. Vincent said he's coming back for dinner tonight." Ignoring Susan's complaints behind me, I opened the door and left. The driver had been waiting outside for a while. Seeing me, he opened the car door and politely asked, "Miss Mandy, heading home?" After I nodded, he started the car slowly. The car rolled along a street covered with sycamore leaves, crushing them into powder. Suddenly, my phone rang in the pocket of my coat. I unlocked it, and the pinned conversation was still sitting on an older chat. I refreshed a few times, and still no new messages from him. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with group chat messages. Floods of messages streamed in. "Congrats, Vincent, holding hands with the goddess." It's like everyone's forgotten I'm in this chat too. Or maybe they remember, but just don't care. I scrolled through and saw a photo of intertwined fingers. The hands belonged to someone who, this morning, still caressed my hair and whispered sweet nothings to me at night. On his ring finger, he still wore our matching ring. I looked at my own under the light. It's a bit loose. The diamond sparkled in the sun. When I got back to the little riverside villa, this was where Vincent settled me after we got together. I've lived here for years, and the place was filled with traces of my life. I looked around. The gray curtains, all switched to light blue by me. The couch, carelessly scattered with throw pillows. I loved to watch movies there with all the lights off. When he wasn't too busy, Vincent would watch with me. The once empty kitchen now had a variety of cookware and dishes, signs of life everywhere. I expertly tied an apron, prepared the ingredients the maid bought in the morning, and set them to stew. My thoughts drifted away uncontrollably. To be honest, I don't cook, and Vincent? No way he would. For a long time, the kitchen was just for show. On days we ate together, it was either dining out or catered meals. When Vincent wasn't around, it was instant noodles, takeout, and chips that filled my belly. The turning point came one night. Vincent got wasted at a party, and late at night, he threw up bile and had to be rushed to the hospital. I stayed by his side all night while he was on a drip, looking pale, with cracked lips, a little pitifully quiet. For some reason, I thought if only I could cook. Porridge would do him good right now. That day, I went out and bought pots and pans, filling up the kitchen completely. When Vincent came back, I was busy in the kitchen, smoke everywhere. Vegetables littered the floor. In the midst of the chaos, I turned to greet him. "You're back. Wash up. Dinner will be ready soon." I turned back to cooking and felt his arms wrap around me. Vincent whispered softly in my ear, "Mandy, you make me feel at home." Just then, the fish jumped out of the pot and flopped on the floor. We exchanged a glance, and I sheepishly picked up the fish to clean it again. By the time dinner was finally ready and served, hours had passed. Half-cooked rice, charred veggies, and fish with its innards and scales intact. I circled my chopsticks and set them down on the table. "Maybe we should just eat out." Vincent smiled and picked up some veggies with his chopsticks, putting them into his mouth. He ate slowly, like he was enjoying every bite. I reached for the fish with my chopsticks, and when I dipped in, blood seeped out. Silently, I put down my chopsticks and snatched his away. Eventually, we both curled up on the couch with a bucket of instant noodles each, slurping while watching TV. He held his fork and looked at me with bright eyes. "This is so good. Can we have it again tomorrow?" The beeping of the stew pot interrupted my thoughts. I had been standing there unknowingly for hours, watching the pot that had switched to keep warm mode. I shuffled my numb feet over to the sofa and collapsed onto it. The sunset bathed the room in golden light, and I buried my face in a pillow. I had a feeling Vincent wasn't coming back today. Before Vincent, I sang in bars. In that noisy atmosphere, I'd softly sing folk songs into the microphone. No one really wanted to hear me sing, but I needed money. My parents left me with huge debts and disappeared, and even after selling everything, it wasn't enough. I needed money. I begged and pleaded to get the gig. Maybe it was because I was a bit attractive, or maybe they just felt sorry for me. Either way, they gave me a chance. The job was hard to come by. When someone asked me to join them for a drink, I usually couldn't refuse. So when someone grabbed my wrist, I thought it was some guy who'd had too much. I turned, ready with my usual smile, and saw Vincent's face. Sharp features, exquisite facial structure, dreamy eyes with a small red mole at the corner. I was momentarily dazed. He pulled a ring box from his pocket and slipped the ring onto my finger. Clearly drunk, he kept mumbling, "Wendy, don't go." Back then, I didn't know who Wendy was. My eyes fell on the diamond ring in my hand. I only had one thought: pawn the ring to pay debts, even if it meant jail time. Before I finished wrestling with my decision, someone had already taken Vincent away. My shouts were drowned out by the clamor and the crowd. The next day, I saw Vincent again in the bar's staff room. This time, he was neat in a business suit, looking very sophisticated. Before he could speak, I took the ring out of my bag. "You must be here for the ring. You seemed drunk last night," and slipped it onto my finger before leaving. "I figured you'd come back for it today." I handed the ring to him, but he didn't even glance at it. "Come with me. You don't need to work here anymore." He pulled out a black card and presented it to me. "I don't know what you like, but you can buy anything you want." I only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Vincent paid off all my debts and settled me in a small villa, provided a housekeeper and a driver, and gave me a substantial allowance every month. He never reclaimed the ring. With his silent consent, I wore it back on my finger, deliberately ignoring the fact that it didn't belong to me. Actually, not just the ring, Vincent himself never really belonged to me either. Through Vincent, I got into his social circle. The first time he took me to meet his friends, as soon as the door to the private room opened, all views were on me with an indescribable meaning. I even directly heard their whispers. "The person Vincent brought looks just like Wendy. Didn't Miss Wendy just leave? And now someone else is here already." I don't know if Vincent really loved Wendy or what. How could he not love her? If he didn't, why would he propose at the airport and even stop the plane? Vincent's expression didn't change. If anything, his smile grew broader. He moved closer to the loudest speakers. "Speak up, I can't hear you," he said, scanning the room with a hint of disdain. "When did I, Vincent, ever need to care what you think?" Beside him, I kept a calm smile, thinking only one thing: wealthy people surely know how to handle things. But Vincent was truly generous to me. So, even without him saying anything, I naturally positioned myself accordingly. Curiosity led me to find photos of Wendy online, and I grew my hair like hers. Wendy's skin looked great, so I invested time in beauty and wellness. After all, I was spending Vincent's money, but the beauty was mine. In a few months, I made myself look glamorous. My wardrobe, filled with white dresses Vincent sent over, shone on me. Honestly, I didn't like wearing white dresses, but Vincent gave me so much that I felt I could enjoy it too. Except for one thing, Vincent never touched me. I couldn't tell if he was being loyal to a loved one or if I wasn't playing the part well enough. So, I kept trying to be Wendy. Then one day, Vincent was taking me to a party. I was wearing the heels he gave me and fell down the stairs. The silver crystal heels broke, and I sprained my ankle. I have a problem. I can't wear heels. That day, we didn't make it to the party. Vincent took me to the hospital, holding me for scans and treatment. Leaning against his chest, I could hear his heart pounding. After everything, he left me in the room, his voice turning stern. "Why didn't you say you couldn't wear heels?" I lowered my head, speaking pitifully. "Without heels, I wouldn't look like her." Vincent knew who I meant. He lifted my head to see my tear-streaked face. His stern look softened into resignation. He lowered his head and kissed my tears away. That tear-soaked kiss then landed on my lips. Everything happened naturally. Afterward, nestled in his arms, his hand gently stroked my head. "Mandy, you don't have to be anyone else," he said, his voice surprisingly tender as his heart raced in his chest. On day 3, he cleared out all the high heels I'd never worn from the house. He also stopped filling my closet with white dresses. I started to cautiously show my own preferences. Honestly, sometimes I thought Jack might have a little bit of love for me. But then Wendy came back, and Vincent brought her back, straight to our home. I was wearing loungewear, ironing Vincent's shirt in the living room. When they walked in together, I froze for just a second before composing myself, even managing a polite smile. "Miss Wendy, would you like tea or coffee?" Wendy didn't answer. Vincent spoke up instead. "Coffee, with milk and sugar." "Same for me." As I turned to make it, I could still feel Wendy's scrutinizing gaze on me. She wasn't here with good intentions. Sure enough, when I placed the coffee in front of her, she spoke with a mocking tone. "You do look a bit like me," she said, her eyes scanning me up and down. "Just a little less stylish. Vincent, your taste is getting worse. When did I ever wear such ugly clothes?" I didn't think there was anything wrong with the bunny print on my loungewear. I shifted my gaze to Vincent, hoping he'd say something in my defense. Vincent took a sip of his coffee and didn't even look up. "You're different," he said. "Different how? Like the difference between the original and a copy?" Even as someone's stand-in, over the years I've grown some backbone. Plus, the real person is back, so getting rid of me is just a matter of time. Vincent's comment seemed to amuse Wendy. She laughed hard, hiding her mouth with her hand, but when her eyes landed on the ring on my finger, her expression changed entirely. "Where did you get that ring?" she demanded. I rolled my eyes and said provocatively, "Vincent gave it to me. Put it on me himself." That last part was a lie, but she clearly believed it. Her pretty eyes filled with tears immediately. "That was my ring, a gift from Vincent." I let my smile widen. "If it was yours, why's it on my hand? Maybe you should ask yourself why." With a slap, my cheek stung, and Wendy stood there defiantly. I grabbed her hair, and as she struggled, the coffee cup was knocked over, coffee spilling everywhere, splattering our clothes. Wendy's pristine dress was instantly stained. Vincent grabbed my wrist and yanked me aside. I stumbled to regain my balance. Standing in front of Wendy protectively, he frowned, clearly annoyed. "Mandy, that was too much. It's just a ring. If Wendy wants it, give it to her. I've given you so much jewelry. They all beat this one." Yes, Vincent has given me plenty of expensive jewelry, but none were rings. I know the gap between my status and Vincent's, that his family would never accept me. So now, I couldn't even deceive myself a little longer? Wendy peeked out from behind him with a triumphant smile. I knew she wouldn't want any hand-me-down ring. She wanted what originally belonged to her. I looked at Vincent with a soft smile, but my voice had a cold edge. What if I don't? It might have been the first time this spoiled canary showed some claws, and Vincent's tone softened a little, trying to coax me. "If Wendy likes it, give it to her. It's no big deal. I'll get you another, okay?" Another what? He couldn't even finish his sentence. "But since Miss Wendy wants it, I have to oblige." I took off the ring, dangled it in front of them, and as Vincent reached out, I let it fall. It hit the ground with a thud. I stepped on it, pressing down hard with my foot before turning to leave. Behind me was Wendy's whiny voice and Vincent's angry one. "Mandy, come back and apologize." Vincent never truly understood me. I'm not a pushover. I've seen enough of life's cold shoulders to become this hard. In the beginning, it was about money. I later convinced myself that through those shared nights and days, maybe Vincent could harbor some feelings for me, but I was just deluding myself. It's all just me being foolish. If it's wrong, it shouldn't continue. How did I not see sooner that Vincent is just someone who wants to have his cake and eat it too? Within 3 days, I moved out of the little villa Vincent had set up for me. 5 days later, he cornered me in the apartment hallway I'd moved into. Standing in the shadows, Vincent didn't stop me as I walked past. "Mandy, come back with me." I didn't even turn around. "Go back where?" His cool hand grabbed mine, and I felt his breath at my neck. "Come home, Mandy. The last time was my fault." "I'm sorry." I felt a bit soft-hearted, but then I remembered scrolling past news today. I steeled myself and pulled away from Vincent. "Are you planning on keeping me unofficially forever? Isn't the lavish wedding between Nick and Miss Wendy happening soon?" Though I wasn't sure if I had the right to say this, I told him, "Vincent, we're done." I didn't even finish my words before Vincent threw me over his shoulder and into a waiting car. He took me back to the villa. Vincent had lost it. He was holding me captive, with someone watching me. Even when he left the villa, he acted as if nothing was wrong, patting my head. "Behave while I'm away. I'll be back once I'm done with work." I rolled my eyes internally. Why not wait till Wendy gets pregnant and comes back to me? I called Susan. She was probably the only one who could help me out of this smoothly. I quickly briefed her on the situation over the phone. Without hesitation, Susan agreed to help. Late at night, I turned off the lights in my bedroom and climbed out from the balcony on the 2nd floor. I ran a good distance, then got into the car Susan arranged. With Susan's help, I left quickly. The SIM card and bank card were all provided by Susan. The money in my bank account was from Vincent over the years. It wasn't an extravagant lifestyle, but enough to last me a lifetime. I set off for Turkey. It's a place I've always wanted to visit. Stepping onto Turkish soil, I instantly felt a sense of relaxation. Every tree and blade of grass here felt healing. After exploring for a few days, I ended up renting a villa. It had a small yard, 2 stories, and a little garden. Once everything was settled, I sent a picture of the yard to Susan. The conversation inevitably drifted to Vincent. Through the screen, I could sense Susan's gloating tone. Vincent seems to have some real feelings for you. Right now, he's in a mess, busy with Wendy's family and looking for you everywhere. Susan finds watching drama her greatest interest. When I first entered Vincent's world, she lurked in the background with a drink, watching the show. Then, during one of those dramas, she almost got hurt and I happened to help her. If you could call anyone a friend, she was probably my only friend. Vincent would search for a few days, get tired, and then stop. It's just a disobedient canary flying away. Even if he's upset, it'd only be for a few days. He's a young master. When has he ever taken such a hit? I had no intention of lingering on this topic any longer. I made a few casual remarks and quickly ended the video call. The sunlight in Turkey was wonderful, and life was leisurely and slow. During the day, I was the boss lady of a small inn. At night, I sang at a bar. Here, no guests ever grabbed my wrist while drunk. I held the microphone and sang softly on stage. Time and again, no need to remember the past, those old friends won't return. On Vincent's engagement day, I received a video shot by Susan. The venue was lavishly decorated. Wendy, in a white couture gown, held Vincent's arm in a dark suit. They both smiled gracefully at the camera, like a perfect couple. I felt a dull, lingering ache in my chest, not intense, but persistent. Their parents took the stage to officially announce the union between the families. Just as I was about to turn off my phone, a local delivery guy burst into the venue shouting, "Vincent, who is Vincent? Ms. Mandy sent you something." Hearing my name, faces in the room changed, and Wendy instinctively tried to stop him, but Vincent had already reached out for the item. I was puzzled because I hadn't sent Vincent anything. The video continued, and when the gift box landed in Vincent's hand, it opened automatically. A delicate jar and a thick stack of papers appeared. The video ended, and the last thing I saw was Vincent's alarmed and helpless face. I typed to ask Susan. "I didn't send Vincent anything. Do you know what he received?" Susan replied almost instantly, "Your ashes." "Me? My ashes? And those papers?" Again, a quick reply, "Your medical records and death certificate." I called her, but it was declined. Trying again, the video call was answered. Susan's stunning face appeared on the screen, her makeup more elaborate than usual. Before I could ask, she spoke up. "Vincent is searching everywhere for you. If I don't make a move, he's going to trace it back to me." Her tone was somewhat mocking. "He's losing it. He's almost turned the whole of City A upside down for you. Your family isn't afraid of Vincent, but there's no point in facing off against him." Susan wasn't telling me the whole truth. If Susan really wanted to hide someone, Vincent wouldn't find them, nor trace it to her. That's why I asked her for help in the first place. Moreover, she left the venue quickly, so the engagement party was disrupted. "What's your objective?" Susan paused, lit a cigarette, and smiled at me. "What could my objective be? Of course, it's to help you." I didn't believe her. I looked at Susan, my eyes filled with suspicion. On the screen, Susan blew out a smoke ring. "I wasn't mistaken. You love Vincent. His family would never let you in. I used you, sure, but I also helped you, didn't I? Without me, you wouldn't have left Vincent." I tentatively asked. "You hate Vincent?" Susan shook her head and stubbed out her cigarette. "No, because I love Nick. Nick doesn't want to marry into my family. He doesn't love me, but he's competing with Vincent for inheritance. How could I let Wendy become Vincent's ally?" I realized I probably never knew Susan at all. After hanging up the call, I chuckled to myself out of self-mockery. Maybe my meeting Susan was part of her plan too. I spent a few uneasy days. Opening my phone, I was inundated with news about the disrupted engagement. Vincent left everyone at the party and ran off. Wendy was left alone, facing countless cameras and stares. In the footage, Wendy's eyes were red, but she forced a smile. In the following days, headlines featured Wendy getting drunk, captured on photos at nightclubs. At night, I continued to sing at the bar, glancing at my phone which lit up. I saw a few words, "Milk powder, quick run, what's that?" After finishing a song, I picked up my phone to unlock it. Susan's message. "Vincent drank too much and smashed your urn, spilling the ashes everywhere. You better run, someone's coming after you. Why didn't you mix some coffee powder in there?" We ran out of coffee. I was typing to curse at her when someone suddenly grabbed my hand. I turned my head and met Vincent's angry eyes. He looked pale and had lost a lot of weight. His eyes were bloodshot. "Your family's ashes look like baby formula?" He stared at me sharply, his voice gritting through his teeth. "Mandy, you can't even bother to lie to me convincingly." I forced a dry smile. "Didn't I just say we ran out of coffee powder?" I broke free from his grip and rubbed my slightly red wrist. I tried to be nice and poured him a glass of juice. "Vincent, are you here on vacation? Did you book a hotel, or do you want to stay at my place?" As soon as I said it, I wanted to punch myself. Vincent clearly did not want to waste time chatting. His tone was ice cold. "Mandy, I'm here to take you home." There were quite a few people around, and they were starting to notice us. I signaled to the bar owner with my eyes that I could handle it. I took Vincent's hand with a bit of a pleasing smile. Remember I told you I wanted to open a place called the Bed and Breakfast? Well, I did. Do you want to check it out? I half dragged, half pulled him away. Once we got back to my place, I dropped the act and let go of his hand immediately. If it weren't for being outside and worrying about disrupting others' business, I would have lost it already. Vincent, left where I'd tossed him, let out a chuckle, speaking in a self-mocking tone. Mandy, you just used me and then ditched me. If you come back with me, it'll be the same as before. I spoke, impatiently, the same as being in hiding? Vincent was taken aback for a moment, but I didn't give him a chance to argue. Wendy's back. Do you still want this fake? Why, do you have a hoarding problem? But I'm a person, a living, breathing person, not a collectible, not an exhibit, not something you use to spite Wendy. Vincent shook his head, eyes red, and slowly took a fancy box from his pocket. I admit, at first, I saw you as a stand-in, but then I really fell for you. I know you've always wanted a ring, so I got one made just for you, fit perfectly. As the box opened, I swept it to the floor. Vincent knew all along what I truly wanted but chose to ignore it, watching me wear a ring that was never mine for so long. And now, this supposedly a mine ring is just a ploy to coax me back, to shackle me. Tears suddenly fell from my eyes. Vincent, go back. I don't want to leave. I'm happy here. Vincent's gaze fell to the ring that rolled on the floor, his voice gritty. Mandy, I truly love you. The marriage with Wendy is just a stopgap. What I want. I didn't wait for him to finish and spoke quietly. I know, it's for the inheritance. And I know you'll say you don't love Wendy anymore, that marrying her is just to compete with Nick for the inheritance. I looked up, meeting his surprised eyes. Vincent, I know you have feelings for me, but those feelings aren't equal. Your love for me is like the love for a pet. When Wendy wasn't around, I could fool myself into thinking you loved me, too. But Wendy showed up and shattered all my illusions. Vincent, you promised to take me to Turkey once. But over the years, while we flew to numerous countries and attended countless parties, you never found the time to bring me here. Now that I've got out, I don't want to go back. I looked around my little bed and breakfast, at the light blue curtains, the soft pink sofa, the bright little ornaments. I spun around in front of Vincent. This dress I'm wearing, I made it myself. The freedom I want, you can't give me anymore. In the end, neither of us could convince the other, but he didn't go crazy and haul me back home. I tidied up a room for him, then headed back to mine. Had a good night's sleep. The next morning, sunlight poured into the room and I finally got up. Yawning, I went to open the front door. Vincent was still there, sitting in the garden with his laptop. No sooner had the door opened, a voice came from the entrance. Wendy, your uncle went up the mountain this morning and picked some wild fruits. I'm bringing some over. I smiled and went over to take the basket. Thanks, Auntie. I politely refused her offer to come over for lunch. I pointed at Vincent with my mouth. I've got a friend over. Next time I'll come by for sure. Vincent looked up from his busy work and couldn't resist taking a jab at me. You've got quite the social circle, huh? I wasn't going to let that slide. Not as good as yours. I waved the basket playfully. Staying for lunch? Vincent's face turned a shade darker. You're just waiting for me to leave, aren't you? Shrugging, I couldn't be bothered to reply and turned to the kitchen. Without getting a definitive answer, I made lunch for two anyway. The meal was quiet, no one said much. Vincent's phone buzzed non-stop, but he didn't even glance at it. After the meal, when I went to wash the dishes, Vincent spoke. Mandy, I'm leaving. I paused, hands under the running water, and turned around. Vincent was all packed up, looking ready to go. Safe travels. Vincent's voice took on a pleading tone. Mandy, are you really not coming with me? This time, he dragged a suitcase and changed into some casual clothes. When he walked in, we were just reaching with our chopsticks to grab the first piece of grilled meat. While everyone turned to look at him, I quickly snatched the meat into my own bowl and met his gaze. I didn't feel like sharing the meat. Want some? Vincent shook his head and walked past me, tugging his suitcase along. College students were still laughing and goofing around the grill in the little garden. I made a bowl of noodles for Vincent and brought it to his room. He took the noodles. I heard the owner of this B&B can hang out with us here. I was caught off guard for a moment, looking at his hopeful eyes, then nodded instinctively. Seeing me nod, he lowered his head and started eating the noodles. Such a simple bowl of noodles was eaten by him cleanly. In the days that followed, I accompanied him to the nearby attractions. Neither of us brought up the past. Time flew by. At night, he wore the clothes he made himself and stood on the rooftop watching the stars, a can of beer in hand. There was wind at night making his clothes billow. His back was to me, speaking softly. Mandy, I'm leaving tomorrow. Being with you was genuine. When I was a kid, I met a girl in a princess dress. I searched for her for years until I found out she was Wendy. The moment I saw her again, I recognized her. I pursued her, and after we got together, she suddenly decided to go abroad. Then I met you, and when I had already fallen for you, she returned. Mandy, I started to envy my brother. I've competed with him for so long, yet he just left everything behind. Mandy, do you think I've failed? Of course, he was a failure because the one he met back then was me. The me whose family hadn't faced any turmoil. From the first moment we met again at that bar, I recognized him and willingly remained, becoming Wendy's stand-in. I thought he'd forgotten that little girl completely by now. Mandy, when we're together, it's not you and me. Mandy, let's break up. He turned around, tears streaming down his face. He held me close, his tears warm on my neck. His voice choked with emotion. I'm sorry, Mandy. I'm going to marry Wendy. I patted him on the back, feeling a bit relieved. It's okay. I forgive you. Forgive you for letting me go. Forgive your cowardice. The next morning when Vincent left, I didn't see him off. He dragged his suitcase out the door while I stood by the window on the second floor, watching his figure fade away. Watching him step by step, head into a future without me. All that we went through, all we missed. Leave the love and hate behind in this incredibly forgiving place. That's probably our best ending.